Hey everyone, this is Tammy. I'm the business analyst here at Ag Explorer's home office. Even though I'm not out in the field every day with our sales reps, I do get to support them behind the scenes by reviewing product data, putting together sales information, and just being there for them anytime they need any information to help their customers make better decisions. And speaking of making better, well-timed decisions, today's From the Field episode focuses on taking a simple seed and turning it into a powerhouse plant factory. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to Gunther and team. Take it away, Gunny.
Tammy, thanks for bringing us in and kicking us off today. Welcome back to another From the Field. I am Gunther Kreps. I'm the Executive Vice President with Ag Explorer, and I'm happy to be here today with my young friend, Colton Heater. Colton, you're a graduating student from Rossville FFA, right?
Yep, that is correct.
What's unique about this particular farm that we're standing on today? What have we used it for?
So what we've used this field for in the past, I think 3 to 4 years, we've used it as kind of a test plot for the local FFA chapter that I've been lucky enough to be a part of, and we've gotten to see what goes into growing a crop outside of just the planter, as you may be able to see behind us, to the combine. So all the seed sales, chemical sales, all those people involved.
Right on. So really, guys, it's so much more than just a test plot. It's a career plot. What we do is my wife and I donate this particular farm, and along with Ag Explorer, we donate a lot of the plant nutrition products that go on this farm, but there's a lot of companies that are involved. And what we do is we give these kids an opportunity to experience what jobs are in agriculture off the farm. So boys like me, or boys and young ladies that come off the farm that don't have the opportunity to go home and farm, gives them an experience of what they can do in agriculture. So Cole, you had a unique experience last year. You and Gracie did the top 2 students, and we sponsored you guys to go somewhere pretty cool. Where did we go last year?
So we were fortunate enough through Ag Explorer to go to Denver, Colorado to Commodity Classic and get a speak and tour the show out there.
Right on. Yeah, Ag Explorer sponsored the top 2 students. We had a Purdue University, Dr. Scott Downey from the Ag Econ department came out and judged that, along with some other career agriculturists that were out there that came and helped out as well, including some ladies from the FSA office. So pretty cool experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, it really was.
That was one of your times on camera. Now it's just one of many more, right? Many more to come. So guys, I'm honored to have Colton out here. He's somebody that I've known for several years. I take a lot of pride in this young man and how hard he works at school and outside of school. So a great member of our community. Colton, where are you off to after you graduate here later this month?
So I am fortunate enough to get to stay in the great state of Indiana and attend Purdue University.
All right, boiler up.
And study Ag Econ.
Great. Super proud of you for that, Colton. So today from the field, we're going to start focusing on some agronomy and what happens. As you can see, today's a special day. Today it's planting day. And we're not going to talk so much about this phase and what's going on here because we've already prepped for this, right? So we've talked about that foundation phase, that first phase, that combine to planter, and everything that we've done to a farm to enable to prep it for a day like today where we stick the seed in the ground. So on this particular field, we did plow down, we did field work in the fall, we did our burn down here 2 days ago, and then we came in and incorporated that in a couple inches deep with a soil finisher. So today's planting day. In this planter that's going to be coming up behind us, you're going to see 2 tanks on it, a couple different tanks. One's got an in-furrow starter kit and a 2x2 kit carrying some UAN, some 28 and some ATS, as well as some biostimulants and humic acids. So in that furrow trench, we've got some adrenaline going on. Going to get that crop kicked in gear and getting it up and getting it going and through that establishment phase. But today we get to talk, Colton, about the architecture phase. And it's going to be kind of cool because in your presentation that you gave here back in September, you talked about a product that's pretty special. So I'll get to asking you questions about that product in just a second. But when I think about this architecture phase, I think about the goal of what we're trying to do. So when you think about our industry calls this a vegetative stage. I personally think that's a little too generic. You know, plants are structures. You know, leaves are so much more than just a solar panel, right? They're also a fuel tank. They're a fuel tank to hold and store nutrients, to be able to have them so that it's when it's go time to reproduce itself, it's got those nutrients built up in that factory. But we got to build this factory, and then we got to equip it with the right equipment. And there's some things that need to happen. When you think about building a structure, there are biostimulants, there are PGRs, right, that are out there that you're going to talk about in a second, that will tell that plant what to do and where to focus its energy on and to get it established and going through this phase. So there's also some key micronutrients that are essential for on a day like today when this plant's growing to accept sunlight. Right? It's a beautiful day here in the middle of May in Indiana, but and I'm sure there's many more to come. But we need to equip this plant with the right equipment, the tools inside of it to tell that factory to accept this sunlight and physically do something with it. And that's your copper, iron, manganese, zinc, molybdenum, and boron. Those micronutrients that are essential to be able to get that crop up and getting it going. There's another key product that we're going to focus on this year, and it's going to be sulfur. And I'll talk about a product in just a second with that. But when I think about sulfur, back when I was your age, Colton, when I was 18 years old graduating high school, we never thought about applying sulfur on a field, right? Today, it's something that we have to talk to. Yeah. You don't know any different, right? Because Uncle Sam took away our free sulfur through acid rain, right? We don't have that anymore. So now we have the fertilizer for it, and we have to plan for it. So part of our plan on this field is to incorporate this in this post-pass. So Colton, we're going to be making a trip with a product that's pretty special, a first ever EPA registered foliar. Can you tell us a little bit about a product called Architect?
So Architect, kind of build off what Gunny was saying here. Architect, big thing it does is late in season, kind of July, when it gets really hot and plants start to have issues, helps mitigate that stress and get it to where, like, you don't want to go out and sit in a lawn chair middle of July all afternoon. No. Like, that's not comfortable. You want to go inside, you want to be able to cool off. So that plant helps get past, the PGR helps get past that and mitigate that stress. PGR, like Gunny said, also building that factory. Right. Like you said, a fuel tank is a leak. Well, like I've heard you say many times, to go fill a tractor like what's behind us, you don't use a little hand crank and a little garden hose. You don't just have a 100-gallon diesel fuel tank on your farm, do you? No, but it's also getting it from the tank into the combine too, right? Right. Like, you don't want to...
Everybody say hi to David Moeller. David, thank you for planting this farm for our FFA chapter and donating your time. Your two sons, Peyton and Caleb, do a great job to helping us out as well. Super appreciate you guys. So back to this, you're talking about stress mitigation. Yeah. And in that Architect, you know, is a 10-5-5 built with that micronutrient package that I was talking about to accept the sunlight, do something with it. But you talked about stress. You know, when them plants get looking like pineapples, that's probably not a good thing, is it, Cole? Yeah. Right? So we don't want to see that. And that GABA is the PGR component that's built into this. And that GABA is what helps mitigate that stress. So when Mother Nature turns off the spigot and she gets hot and dry, it'll weather that storm better, right? And we've seen it. Yep. And we've seen neighboring fields just across the lane back here that have been pineappled up, and corn 2 years ago here was laying wide open. Yeah. Right? And the cool thing about that, the product like Architect put on a quart to the acre, what you can do is lay that leaf open, continue to accept sunlight, metabolize it because you got the micronutrients in there, but then also be able to close those pores off so they don't lose that turgor pressure, that water pressure, and evaporate all its water, right? Because that's a plant's natural defense molecules to roll up. Yeah. Well, if I can keep it unrolled and accepting sunlight and keep that factory churning, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. I think we'd all agree with that. So Cole, thank you for explaining that product. You've had some experience with it. We're going to use it again. That's part of our planned attack. So what growth stage do you think is best for us to come out and hit that Architect stage?
Really, V4 is kind of what I think I've heard generally is about the best to get the maximum effect out of it.
Yep. So let's talk about that recommendation, Colton. When you think about timing of these nutritionals, you know, there's a term called snake oils. And guys, you can take a great product and turn it to a snake oil like that if you use it at the wrong time. So timing is absolutely essential. V4 is my preferred time to be able to hit it. If there's ever a perfect time, V4 is it. There's a window. It can go on V3 to V5, even all the way into V6. But there's something key that happens between V3 and V5. Do you remember what that thing is, V3 to V5, that ear determination? Remember how it sets the number of kernels around, right? So that little baby corn plant, something really small, is determining our yield so soon. And then all the way through V8, we'll have that ovule development, that length of ear. But we pulled some samples. Cole and I pulled some samples earlier today, and we've got a root system here. And I'm going to use the front of your shirt as kind of a backdrop. But if you look at this, what we're seeing here is there are 2 root systems on a corn plant, right, Cole? So that first root system is a seminal root system. So this is the root system. A lot of times we call it the radical, that great big long one that comes out of the seed. In fact, I've got another one here that's just basically got the radical holding onto it. So if you can see this, we're about probably 7 inches long on this one, 7 to 8 inches. And this one's about 4 inches, but it has more of a supporting cast member to it. But guys, it's about how big the root system is, how robust the root hairs are. You can't see it from the camera because we're just not able to focus in that close. But if you look at this one's got some treatments on it that help set those root systems, those root hairs. And that's what drinks nutrients. Knowing that between V3 and V5, I'm determining my yield, I need to set the stage early. That's what David's doing out here. He's got that corn planter, got the 2 different starter fertilizers, one in furrow, one 2x2, to help manage the efficiency of fertilizer inside this plant, whether it keeps it available in the soil, once it's inside that plant, help it function at a higher level. So that's what he's doing right now. But we're going to come back out at V4, right in the middle of this ear determination, and we're going to hit it with Architect. And we're going to run it to the quarts to the acre. On top of that, I mentioned earlier another element that's pretty key nowadays that wasn't so key when I was Colton's age. And that's sulfur. So something that, guys, you need to think about is your sulfur programs. Now, here's the thing. Like our nitrogen, we know that nitrogen is best managed if you split apply. That should be the first and foremost thing, if you have the means to do it, to be able to do is split apply your nitrogen. Okay, before you ever use a nitrogen management tool or a stabilizer. So when it comes to sulfur, I always recommend that we do the same thing there, because to split apply those and feed that crop at multiple times is way more efficient than just giving it one hit at one time. So for you guys that put all your sulfur in the soil, don't spend any more dollars. Don't invest any more dollars. Reallocate those dollars and put some in your foliar pass for those of you that are doing an in-season post-trip. And that's where we're going to use XR5 sulfur. XR5 sulfur has a biostimulant and intake technology in it that tells that plant to metabolize sulfur, and it also supports the sulfur function inside of a plant from a standpoint of chlorophyll production. Get it to turn dark green, right? The darker green we are, the more sunlight we'll accept, right? Then we have the micronutrients and Architect that you talked about, and that's got the piece where I can take and physically accept those and take it to the next level. But this is corn. What about soybeans? So guys, when I think about soybeans, and I think about that post-trip herbicide and that pass that we can do on soybeans, think about what's going on inside of a soybean plant. Soybeans aren't as easy as corn. We know that corn in between V3 and V5 will determine the number of kernels around. But Cole, you ever seen soybeans that they've got just a main stem that comes up and not a lot of branches off of them? And then you've seen some that had these what's called the axillary branches that got branches that come off that hold the pods. Those are the ones that hold pods. Have you ever seen those? Oh, yeah. And kind of a little more bushier effect, right? I know genetics have some things to do with that. There's ways that we can influence that too. And that's the ways to influence yield early. For those of you that are going out a post-trip, I love Architect at a quart to the acre in the same trip, on that post-herbicide trip on soybeans. So on soybeans, I look at that V2 to V4 time frame, right? So pretty early, pretty small beans, right? And that's when a lot of us guys are out there making our post-herbicide applications, whether we're running the 2,4-D technology or some Liberty or something to that effect. But that's a perfect spot to it. When you do that, what I've witnessed is we can set another 2 to 4 more axillary branches. And that's a way to induce fruiting site opportunity or yield opportunity, right? But it happens during that architecture phase. Okay, so that's corn and soybeans. What about wheat? We got a few acres of wheat around here.
Yeah.
You know, we got wheat around here, coal for these hog farmers, right? To dump their pits on in the summertime, I'm convinced. But, you know, we have an opportunity to raise a great wheat crop. And next, we're going to kick it to John Schaefer in just a second over in Ohio. But before I do that, I want to talk about what Architect does to wheat crop. So in a wheat crop, when it's in that architecture phase, early, in those early peak stages, right? So in those early peak stages, it's going to be determining the number of kernels. Then the number of tillers. Then right after that, it's going to be determining the number of kernels per tiller, right? So how many kernels per head we can have. So just like corn, that yield is determined early. And just like corn, and just like soybeans, plants can get stressed, wheat can get stressed. And Mother Nature turns off the spigot from here to July 1st or July 4th, right? When we're out baling straw, cutting wheat and baling straw, right? We don't want that to happen. But if it does, that stress mitigation that comes out of Architect it makes a huge impact on the wheat crop. So guys, when you're post-herbiciding your wheat, right? Not into that fungicide, not in that head scab time frame, but post-herbiciding your wheat. That's when we want to go out and make an Architect application, right? At a quart to the acre. I will also spike in another quart of XR5 sulfur. So Cole, it's going to be fun. Today's day one of getting this field going, right? Official day of seed in the ground. We're going to take it to the next level. Cole, I appreciate everything that you've done for the FFA, the Rossville FFA, and your commitment to helping put in this plot over the last 3 years, now going on 4. I wish you the best of luck at college. Going to Purdue University makes me proud, and I wish you the greatest success in the world. So next, we're going to take this out, and we're going to send you to Ohio to John Schaefer. John, take it away.
Thanks, Gunny. John Schaefer here, the Ohio sales rep for Ag Explorer. I'm out here with Alec Miller from Lucky Farmers. We're out here in a gorgeous wheat field in central Ohio. This is one of Alec's customers, one of their full service customers they deal with. Alec, why don't you tell us what we've done in this field so far this year?
So this is a split apply application. So the first pass we run about 15 gallons of 28 followed by 5 gallons of thiazole. Second pass we also do the same, 15 of 28, 5 gallons of thiazole, add in the 2,4-D. Then we also added the Architect at a quart.
Okay. And then what, you guys run a flat fan nozzle with that?
Flat fan on the herbicide pass.
Okay. This is the herbicide pass timing. So when we walked in the field, we'll actually take some pictures and show you guys on the screen. But we saw some major differences in just consistency of stand and canopy density, as well as consistency of height across the field. What we're really seeing with the Architect, that's kind of what we're here today looking. We've got behind us, this has all been sprayed with it. The headlands out of the camera, you guys can't see that, have not been. What we've really seen is a more consistent stand height, a thicker canopy. Once you show them what we pulled in that pipe there, you can see. So
Much
really
more biomass.
More biomass, a bigger root structure compared to with and without. I think Zach's got some pictures he's going to throw up there for you guys to check out. What the Architect's really doing out in this field is when we apply that at that time frame, we're increasing our stalk diameter and our flag leaf size. And what we can do with that, we can capture more sunlight and more energy into that plant late season for that grain fill time period. What are your plans here the rest of the year in this field?
So the next step is the fungicide pass. We'll be using Maravis Ace along with the Onward Max and KSB.
Okay, awesome. That'll get us to the finish line on it. We just came from the customer's place. He seems to be pretty happy with what stuff looks like this year, and we want to kind of share what's going on in parts of Ohio. I know things have been wet here the last week and a half. Planting is just now getting back to going here in central Ohio. One more rain and we'll finish this wheat crop out. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, John. Thanks.
Hey, well, thanks, John. Looks like things are going great over in Ohio, and you guys are off to a great start in terms of what your crops are looking like. So I am outside Wablo, Missouri with my great friend, James Dampier. So James, first of all, if you aren't from Wablo or you aren't from Hickory County, tell me exactly where are we in the state of Missouri?
Well, we're about 60 miles north of Springfield. It's just a little farm community here. I think the population of Wablo is about 175 or 200 people. and we farm up here, and this is mainly cattle country, but there is quite a little bit of row crop around here also. Our soil's pretty thin around here, but with poor people, we've managed to make it work.
That's right. And that's one reason I enjoy talking to you, because you just brought up, you just have to make it work.
You have to make it work.
Right? We can't get by. We don't have 4 foot deep soils.
No.
But to me, I think it's the prime thing to be talking about, how do you develop a crop? And I find it interesting, we're standing in front of your John Deere tractor. You guys are getting ready to roll up some beautiful hay.
We hope
that's
so.
right here behind me. So I'm going to hurry and get out of your way. But to me, whether we're talking about hay, or we're talking corn, we're talking winter wheat, or we're talking soybeans.
Yes, sir.
Everything that you have grown.
Yes, sir.
Key things that we see in that are NP and K, but something recently is sulfur.
Correct.
So James, talk to me a little bit, when you think about sulfur and you think about the importance of it with growing a plant where we are right now, what do you see and what have you've done in the past?
Just as far as sulfur?
Yeah.
Well, granted, our NP and K is what everybody kind of thinks about, with they're building their soil fertility. But as farmers and business owners have factories.
Yep.
Okay, so our soil is our factory. So we need to build our soil while we can to increase our factory to be able to produce the product that we're trying to raise, whether it be cattle, grains, grass. I'm mainly out of most of the grain deal anymore. I'm mainly into hay production, which I have been for 30 years. But sulfur is one of the key components that most people don't look at, and that's where they're really falling down, is with sulfur content, because if your sulfur content is low, you're going to have pale, you're going to have yellowing tips on beans, and if the darker you can keep a plant, the better photosynthesis can work. So whenever you have moisture from photosynthesis, sunlight then on that will cause it then to be able to move the nutrients that you have in your base in your soil through the plant zone into the leaf tissue, so it has the ability to continue to grow.
You said a couple things there that I want to jump on real quick, because I love your example. You talked about the factory.
Yes.
Right? And you talked about how your soil can be a factory, and oftentimes we think about plants as factories as well.
Correct.
And you brought in the sulfur part with photosynthesis.
Yes.
Right? When we think sulfur, we know it's a key component of chlorophyll. And whether you're trying to grow 6 tons of the acre hay, or we're trying to push 225 bushel beans, or 80 bushel, or 225 bushel corn.
Yeah, 225 bushel beans, boy, you're really onto something there.
Or 80 bushel beans, we have to be growing that whole factory.
Correct.
Right? It's about everything you're doing right now. And you brought up, man, when we're deficient in sulfur, things become pale. And when things become pale, we don't capture the beautiful sun that we have right now.
That's correct.
In order to generate yield that we want at the end of the year. So let me ask you a question. You've been in ag a little bit longer than I have. Rarely do I find that anymore. 20 years ago.
Yeah, I'm getting antique,
20 years ago.
Yes, sir.
What did we talk about with sulfur?
Well, we really didn't talk about it. People didn't really do that much on soil sampling, but also 30 years ago, before the power plants, before the DNR and EPA made them refined down to where they wasn't emitting any sulfur, back then we got most of our sulfur from rain, coming back down, clearing the air out. Since that's pretty much eliminated, now we got to look at other sources for getting our sulfur. For us, we're in a poultry litter business, and we move 15 to 20,000 ton a year. We mainly just use manures. Now, some of our broiler litter will have like 30 to 40 pounds of sulfur per ton. So if we're putting on 2 to 3 ton, we're putting on a tremendous amount of sulfur.
So you brought up 2 things I want to jump on right there. You and I were visiting earlier, right? If you look at maps that are available from NOAA and everything like that, we used to get 25 plus pounds of sulfur for free every single year.
I didn't realize that.
High amounts. And now you look at it, we're 2 or 3 pounds.
Is that all we're getting now?
So we're just not getting very much. And so we didn't ever talk about it. I went through the first part of my school, never talked about sulfur, NPK, right? That's what we talked about. But then the second thing, and I think it's key no matter what source we use, right? I love the litter you guys use, but you talked about the amount of sulfur, because we haven't spent time managing sulfur like we manage nitrogen, where, hey, we know how many pounds we need per bushel, how many pounds we need per ton, because there is so much for free. And when we think about crops, especially like a hay crop, we think about corn, we think about beans, we think about canola further up north.
Yeah.
They have a desired amount that we need to supply. And a lot of times that's 25 to 35 pounds of sulfur. You guys are meeting it in a great way by utilizing manure. Other ways though that we see people doing it, and I know you guys have done it in the past before we got in the manure business, using AMS,
Yes.
using ATS.
Yep.
Some people now are using some elemental. And I think it's great that we have that program, right? We load that up in the front. However, we know that sulfur in the plant available form, sulfate, moves through the soil just like nitrate. And we no longer manage our nitrates with 100% front load, right? We design these programs.
That's correct.
And so when we start thinking about how do we supply it season long, I think it becomes interesting about how do we make sure it has it early right now, but then how do we make sure it has it late? Because as you and I were talking about soybeans, once we set flower, 60+% of the sulfur it needs is required after we set flower.
Yeah, I didn't know that until you told me that. Yeah.
But it's a huge amount.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And we
Yeah.
think about soybeans, and we have to have it for all the protein that forms, right? All of our high protein crops have to have sulfur to form those proteins. How do you think, when you go back and you think about either AMS, ATS, manure, or using a small amounts of foliar in season, what has been your experience with that?
Well, we've used different types of sulfur, and I used to have 200 acres alfalfa, okay? Alfalfa pulls a tremendous amount of potassium off. It also needs quite a little bit of sulfur. You know, and we've used different forms over the year for sulfur, but still yet, we have always tended to use our manures for our phosphorus, potassium, and our sulfur needs, but you cannot put it on unless the plant is dormant. Because what will happen is when you drive across that with your floater tires and scuff those leaves, the nitrogen in it will kill it.
Yep.
This field out here in front of me, there's 110 acres. The first time I ever done it years ago, I had 32-inch strips dead in about a week. But sulfur is, especially in alfalfa, any crop actually, I think your legumes maybe are a little more in need of sulfur than maybe some of the others, but anything to keep your plant dark green. And sulfur is one of the key components to make photosynthesis work. And, you know, John's a very, very highly intelligent agronomist. He knows more than anybody I've ever talked to. I love talking to him, and he's a dear friend of mine. I'm just an old man that's made more mistakes than you can ever think of, but I've tried to learn from him. You know, so 50 years of dealing with this stuff, I've learned a little bit along the way. But I know sulfur is one of the, I'd hate to say it's the most important component, but it's right up there in the top 3 or 4.
I agree. And one thing I think that as I've visited with you that we've learned is that we have to manage it all season long. Right?
Yes.
We have to manage it. And I know that you've used some foliar sulfur, and I know it can make people nervous. But when you utilize a foliar sulfur, the nice thing about it is you get a pretty quick response.
Yeah.
I know you had an instance where you guys were spraying fields and then some rain blew in and you weren't able to finish it in, what was it, 72
hours? The coffee shop talk was, what did Dampier do out there around that 100 acre field? And it was what we did, you know. I mean, we used some Ag Explore products at that time. We know was using Soy Science, sulfur, and Calpac. And in 72 hours, that strip I made opening up the field was darker green than the rest of the field was. And it was like 2 weeks before we got back on. It rained quite a bit and we couldn't get back on. And it was just amazing to see what that did. You know, was it the potassium or was it the sulfur? I always figured it was the sulfur that greened it up. Now, question for you. How is the best way to get sulfur into our crops before we plant, after we plant? Help me out on that.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's something that you and I've discussed. I've had a chance to talk with a lot of people. I think it comes back to managing the program. You and I are a true believer you have to build the soil, right?
First.
You brought up the factory. However, we can reallocate. It's not that you ask people to spend more. It's simply that you're asking to put some AMS up front. Maybe we come in and we put some with the side dress, but then we also apply it at the time when we know those beans and that corn
Are peaking,
and we have to have it. And really the only way that you can look at doing that is with a foliar application for the timing, right? And it's in that plant available form. And like you said, and it's why I enjoy talking with you, you've seen it. And it wasn't
Oh, yeah.
planned. No, I mean, it wasn't planned, but I think
Most
our
of the things
best
you
things
learn are
not planned.
accidents, you know.
But it gives us the perfect example of why we need to have a system.
Yeah.
Because you see the response and we know what it's doing, right? The darker green, the more photosynthesis, the better quality, better nitrogen utilization. And it's that whole plant, right? It's all the way across as we look at it. So James, I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I'm going
Enjoyed
to
it.
kick this up to Ben up in Iowa. Ben and Aaron, you're going to talk about some of our research plots.
All right, thanks, John, for the handoff. Right now, we're standing in central Iowa. We're in a field that was planted actually April 12th. Obviously, it's a cornfield. Majority of Iowa was all planted fairly early. We had really good conditions. As you can see, we're roughly right at V1 to going on pretty close to V2. What we're going to talk a little bit about here today is these educational plots. Educational plots that Ag Explorer has put on this year. We're putting a very intense management program behind these, not only for us, not only for our dealers, but for the end user as well, the growers, the ones that really make the world go around here. But what our purpose is to really educate it as far as the whole program approach, anywhere from at the time we open that bag of seed to the time where we're making our first post pass on herbicide to the time where we're doing some passes around tasseling and flowering on soybeans. We're really approaching that full program approach. Ben, we're out here today in actually your field. Tell us a little bit about what you got going on here right now.
Yeah, no, thanks, Aaron. So I think you brought up a really good point. When we talk about the products that we're using, it wasn't too long ago where, you know, fungicide was considered a snake oil, right? And now we consider it an absolute integral part of our crop program. At least I know we do here in central Iowa. But that's a perfect example of one product that moves the needle, but it doesn't completely take you to that next yield goal, right? So that's what we're looking at doing here on this education plot in central Iowa is we're looking to stack programs to really move to that next level of yield production, right? We know we can do the 2 to 3 to 7 to 8 bushels with some various product depending on yield environments. We know we can do that. We want to really start moving the needle on management practices. So yeah, here we are on our corn. This was planted, like Aaron said, April 12th. That week was the week before Easter. We had really ideal conditions. Good moisture down below. We weren't planting into all below sand for drought wise. So dry on top, good moisture down below. And we started with our planter box treatment, our Grow Pack AI, treated at about 3 ounces per acre, roughly. 3.5 is what I figure we ended up on.
What is Grow Pack AI?
Yeah, great question. So Grow Pack AI is our planter box treatment. It has a base of a micronutrient package. Well, it actually has a base of a seed flow lubrication, so a clay talc mixture. And then it has a micronutrient package in there. It also has microbes in there. And right now, what we're trying to focus on is getting the root system started and getting that plant up and going. And we can actually look at a couple here that we went and dug behind us. So I was out here very shortly after emergence. I happened to catch it. And I would say emergence was pretty even between treated and untreated. So very happy with everything came up. You know, that's not a bad thing that it was even. Right now, and I know the camera's going to be tough to pick it up, fairly close. But the thing, if we zoom in on it, the thing we're really noticing with our treated plant here is a little longer of a radical.
A little bit more root hair structure as well.
For sure.
Which is really going to help with that nutrient absorption.
Yep.
It's going to give us that quicker, early vigor and gets those root hairs out a little bit to really focus on absorbing more nutrients.
Absolutely. You nailed it there. Yep. So we have a couple microbes in there that are really helping with that root development, but we also have that dry humic acid, which awesomely complements this root growth on these corn plants. So yeah, that's where we started at. But like we said, we're going to focus on a program approach. So taking the next step when we start looking at that post herbicide application, and if you're zooming in on your camera, I apologize. We just got done spraying what was supposed to be our pre, but our weather turned a little wet, so it ended up being early emergence application. So we have a little bit of speckling with some acetochlor, but that's okay. So we're going to move into our post application here very shortly, probably in the next 4 weeks, right around that B4, B5 timing. And we're going to be coming in with a couple products. So we're going to be coming in.
Don't move. Zach, get me back up, buddy. Oh my goodness. You guys took quite the fall. Hope you're all right. I bet you thought I was wearing something different and I had somebody standing here next to me. I bet you bumped your head. You're gonna want to get that checked out. As I was saying, we're moving into the architecture phase of this corn crop on this education plot here in central Iowa. What that means is we're going to be looking at making the next application to influence yield. As we're moving into that V5 timing here on corn, that corn is determining kernels around. And we want to do something to influence it to set more kernels around. We're going to be applying a product called Architect from AgExplore. It's a 10-5-5 with a micronutrient package built to support photosynthesis with the technology in it called GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid. What that GABA is going to tell that plant is going to tell it to drop or reduce its stress and set more kernels around. So if we go from 16, we'll go to 18, 18 to 20 there on after. Along with that Architect, we're going to be throwing some additional sulfur in there. And this isn't just a regular sulfur such as ATS or KTS. This is a sulfur plus a technology that also complements and increases the chlorophyll formation that sulfur is influencing at, already at the base. So going to be super excited to watch this crop green up and take off to a much greater start than the non-treated right beside it. And like I said, there is 24 rows right next to this 24 treated. And then on the other side of the hill, which you can't see, there's 55 acres split, treated, untreated. So it's going to be really cool to follow along and take out field variability of product performance. So this application is packed full of technology, but it's really not being done with a piece of equipment that's packed full of technology. And I think that's the cool thing is our products fit in with what you guys are already doing out there. So this application is going to be made with our 4650 John Deere tractor and our pull behind sprayer with 60-foot booms. This is pretty old technology of iron, but really cool technology in the tank. So excited to see what we're doing there. So with that, thanks for coming out here to the education plot. We'll toss it right back to you.
Hey everybody, Scott Siegler, South Carolina Sales Agronomist with AgExplore. Well, we hope today's episode helps you see plants a little bit differently. Like the factors that they are, it's not just about throwing out fertilizer, it's about timing, structure, and understanding what the plant really needs. And if you like this one, don't miss what's coming next. On June 18th, Dr. Murphy talking PGRs, stress mitigation, and practical stuff that can help your crop hold on when Mother Nature pushes back. Go ahead, subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss it. We'll catch you next time from the field.